Hello, guys. I don't know, something's going on with my ring light. So one side is lit and one side is not. I don't know what that is all about, but I am here. Hello, greetings, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Sabby Sab Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right, so shout out to everyone watching on YouTube and Twitter, and I believe Twitch as well. I do want to go ahead and share my thumbnail to show you what we'll be talking about tonight. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Just a second. I really don't know what's going on with the, give me just a second. Because something, I don't know. This guy had me adjust my settings last night on my ring light, and now I can't seem to get it back to exactly what it was. So that's why I don't like changing things. Okay, but anyway, you guys don't care about that. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen to show you what we're talking about tonight. So tonight, we are talking about Thandie Newton Meltdown. What is that all about? Is there some type of colorism issue in Hollywood? So we're going to talk about that. Thandie Newton was ratioed for that video that was on Twitter. And we're going to talk about Joe Biden is losing voters. And you can see the young woman there with a big sign that says cancel student debt. So let me go ahead and get started. I really don't know what is going on with my ring light. Okay, that's a little bit better. Still looks different. It's very dark over here for some reason. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to start with Joe Biden because I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. This is one of the things I said that if he does not fix this, if he does not cancel student loan debt, he is going to have a huge problem coming 2024. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Now, this article came out the other day in the Wall Street Journal. Share here. So listen to this. Biden student debt pledge stalls, frustrating supporters. President backed stalled legislation to cancel $10,000 in debt, and plans for executive action aren't known. So here we go. Oh no. Are they going to make me? Really, dude? Hold on. I think I have to. 1 second. I hate when they do this. See, this is one of those things. Actually, let me see if I can open it on my other screen. This is one of those things where sometimes if I open something on my account, I don't have to sign in. So let me see if it's going to make me. No, it still wants me to sign in. It's very strange. I was able to read this without that's okay. I'll just go to another one. I'll get another one. Okay, here we go. I found another one. Same sentiment though. So let me share my screen. All right. Here we go. On student debt, Biden supporters are growing impatient. Let me make this a little bit larger for you to see. Some of those hoping President Biden might still move to reduce student debt are beginning to waver in their faith. The Wall Street Journal reported Wednesday. It has become unmanageable beast for me. Now, this is coming from Melanie Kelly, who is 38 years old, and she voted for Biden in 2020. A lot of people are not going to vote again. You guys hear this? A lot of people are not going to vote again. And this is what I was trying to warn everyone about. I knew this was going to be an issue. I knew this was going to be a problem. And now you're hearing it from other people. You're not just hearing it from me. So let me go on. A lot of people are not going to vote again because they feel like they're not being heard, she added. Those supporters have praised the temporary extension of the pause on loan repayments. They are nothing less growing impatient. I have no faith in Biden at all on this issue. This is coming from Ryan Velez, who's 36, another Biden voter who also criticized a provision prohibiting the discharge of private student loans through bankruptcy. Taking away bankruptcy protections has obliterated any person's hope who gets in this debt trap of getting out. And I want to talk about that for just a second, and then I'll come back in and finish this article. So let's talk about this for just a second. This is one of those issues that I've talked about before, that remember, it was Joe Biden was the one. He is the reason why we cannot declare bankruptcy for student loans. That was Joe Biden who did that. And now he is in a position where he's president of the United States, and several people, millions of people want you to cancel student loan debt. And I just kind of feel like, in a sense, since you're the one that put that provision in place where people cannot declare bankruptcy on their student loans, given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic still, people are still unemployed, people have been laid off, people have lost their businesses because of this pandemic, I feel like you owe it to the American people to cancel student loan debt. So when I say that you can't file bankruptcy for student loans, what that means is if you get to a point in your life where financially you just cannot pay your student loans, unlike other debt that you have, you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans. So you are pretty much stuck with this debt. And the $10,000 doesn't even put a dent in it. Most people I talk to that have student loans, they have so much student loan debt that $10,000 will probably just pay the interest. And that's what gets a lot of people, is the interest. But we have to be very clear here. A lot of people, you want to talk about millennials, you want to talk about Gen Z, and some people who are Gen X as well. We were told this story that we needed to go to college in order to get these jobs. And now that is true for some of these careers. You do have to have a degree. So we were told that if we wanted to be successful and if we wanted to have a decent life, we had to go to college, whether we could afford it or not. We were told, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because you can always take out student loans from the federal government. And when you graduate from college, you'll be able to get a job that's going to pay you enough money that you'll be able to pay those loans back and you'll live a comfortable life. Well, that turned out to not be the case. And that is why people like myself, friends, family members I know, till this day are still having to deal with student loan debt. Whether you went to a private school or a public school, it really doesn't matter at this point. So I wanted to point that out, that I feel that because he is the one who put this in place that told us that we could not declare bankruptcy on student loans, I believe it is upon him to fix this, especially considering the fact that he is the president at this time. So I'm going to go back into the article. So it goes on to say, and with legislative efforts to forgive student debt failing in Congress, lawmakers have also begun turning up the presidential pressure. He must do this. This is coming from Elizabeth Warren. It's the right thing for generational equality. It's the right thing for racial equality. And it's the right thing for strengthening our economic future. Per data firm Measure One, Americans owe around $1.6 trillion in federal student loans and more than $130 billion in private student loans. Around 43 million have student debt. 43 million people, you guys. Whether or not Biden even has the power to cancel student debt, he does. You guys catch that? Whether or not Biden even has the power to cancel student debt, I just want to go ahead and correct that. He does have the power to cancel student debt. You see how they try to has also proved controversial among his allies. Some believe the move would energize young voters, while others think caution and a punt to Congress are better suited for the situation. I disagree. I think that if you defer this to Congress, I don't think that this is going to happen, because let's just remember here, anytime you defer it to Congress, it can't just pass in the House. It also has to then pass in the Senate. So even if it does pass in the House, I think we all know that it's not going to pass in the Senate. Why would it not pass in the Senate? We have our rotating villains. There's going to be somebody, whether it's Manchin, Sinema, or hell, the parliamentarian, there's going to be somebody that will prevent it from happening. That is why I don't think we should defer this to Congress. I think he needs to go ahead and cancel it on his own. So it goes on to say, meanwhile, White House officials maintain that Biden supports legislation to eliminate $10,000 in student debt per borrower, even if that has yet to happen. So again, as I was saying, the $10,000 isn't really going to help most people who have student loan debt. For those of you in the chat, if any of you have student loan debt, you know how this works. You know that a lot of this money goes to the interest. The interest. I've talked to people who have student loan debt, have had it for years. And some of those people told me that technically they've already paid off their student loans, but all of that money went to the interest. I talked to one woman who told me that she had already paid like $45,000 of her student loan debt. She only owed like $50,000. She said because of the interest, she still owes $50,000. Do you guys see why we can't get ahead? Do you see? Now, I know some people say, well, you should pay more than what the interest is. Yes, if you can. Not everyone can. That's the problem. People are not getting these jobs that they were supposed to get. People went to school for some of these majors that by the time they graduated, there was no job market for it. I'll give you a great example. When I was in college, one of the majors that was actually pretty profitable at that time was advertising and PR. But by the time I graduated from college, those jobs were far and few, and the ones that were available wanted to pay you, let's just say, very little, not enough to live off of. Another thing I think we need to consider when we talk about student loan debt and employment, a lot of times in order to get those jobs that you majored in, your field that you majored in for college, a lot of times you have to move to a city that actually offers those jobs. What do I mean by that? I went to college in the South for undergrad, University of South Carolina. For people like me that majored in broadcast journalism and English, those careers are not, they're not profitable there, and they're far and few. Those of us that went into those creative fields, whether it's journalism, whether it's visual arts, design, graphic design, those types of fields, a lot of times you have to move to a larger city. And those larger cities tend to be expensive to live in. You have to move to places like LA, New York, Boston, Chicago, Philly, maybe Philly with some of them, because that's where a lot of those industries are. So the problem that you often end up running into, number one, you need to have the money to move to those cities. Number two, you need to have the money to be able to afford an apartment in those cities. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of people. Not everyone has family that can just fork out a couple grand to pay for their first apartment for them. Not everyone has that. And if you are one of those students that had to take out student loans because your parents couldn't afford to pay for you to go to college, where are you supposed to get the money to move to these cities where these jobs are and get your apartment? Because a lot of companies nowadays, they don't pay for relocation. Those days are like far and few. I remember my parents talking about that. Like when they were growing up, there were companies like when you got a job in another state, they would actually pay for your relocation expenses. A lot of times going into some of these fields, these businesses, they're not paying for that. They want you to come up with the money on your own. It is your job to get there. And once you're there, then they'll deal with you. So for me, I think we have a larger issue here. The issue is not just the student loan debt. The issue is also the job market. The issue is also some of these universities that are still offering these majors that are not employable. They're not employable anymore. They may have been employable 10, 15 years ago, but the reality is a lot of these industries, they're not hiring people for those roles anymore because they have AI to do it for them. This is not going to end. This is something that is going to continue. Technology is going to increase. So a lot of people are telling these kids, go to these coding boot camps. Okay. But did you know that even at places like at MIT, they're already working on AI that can do coding for you? So this is going to become a recurring issue. We have to find a way to make sure that people will be able to still get jobs. Now, this goes back to the federal jobs guarantee. We don't have a jobs guarantee in this country for people. What are we going to do come 20 years from now when you have all these kids graduated from college and these fields are no longer employable? You can't go back and point fingers at the universities. They already got their money. And you'll still have hundreds and thousands of students with student loan debt. Now, this is one of those things, again, like I've said before, President Biden can do by executive order. He could just cancel it just like that. That would help the economy. That would help a lot of people be able to, I don't know, maybe put money down to get their first home, get married, start families. This is why a lot of younger people aren't doing this these days. They don't have the money. They don't have the, you know how much it costs, how much money you have to put down just to get a house. Even as a first-time home buyer, I did the first-time home buyer program. You know how much money, even for that program, you have to come up with to put down on these homes just to get a home? So what ends up happening is you have a lot of these kids, they get stuck in a situation. They're not finding a job that's going to pay enough for them to take care of themselves and pay their student loans. So they end up moving back in with their parents. That's not the American dream. People don't go to college so that they could just go back home and live with their parents. So we have a larger issue here, but one issue that could be resolved immediately is if Joe Biden would cancel student loan debt. And again, I feel like he is the one who put a lot of people in this situation when he said you cannot declare bankruptcy on student loans. So he's the one that needs to fix it. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Mr. X says, how's studying to be a librarian? It's an obsolete field of work. So I actually have a friend that is a librarian. It is very difficult to get into that field, mainly because a lot of times people that are librarians, they don't leave. Like, I think she's like probably the youngest person that works at the library she works at, and she's in her 30s. So that's the problem that you're going to run into. And like, for people don't know, like being a librarian is actually, that's not an easy job. That is not easy. You have to have a master's. Some may require more than that, but you have to have like I don't know how to say it, but you have to have, you are a resource. You are a knowledge resource. So you have to know a lot, believe it or not. So I wouldn't advise you to go into that field. Leroy said, my girlfriend and I have no intentions of marriage. We understand that it is a business plan in this country. Oh, Leroy. But isn't that like, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm talking about. Mad Scientist Mike said, I owe almost 30K on skills I never profited from in any way. Outside of small freelance projects I had to scrape for, it sucks. I am sorry to hear that, Mike. I'm sorry to hear that. This is the nightmare that we're all living in right now. So it's absolutely true. And the Fed said cut the stimulus check. Eric T. Red said a federal job guarantee program would be huge. Yes, this would be huge. This is what I'm saying. Like, what's going to happen come 20 years from now? A lot of you guys know I worked in higher ed. I worked in higher ed for, I'd say, almost 12 years. So I know a lot about it. And I'm just here to tell you, I've watched colleges close within the past couple of years because they just weren't getting the enrollment numbers up. A lot of these small liberal arts colleges, which, by the way, again, these fields are not hiring people right now. So I don't know. I don't know. My advice to younger people today, and I've said this before, is that if it were up to me to redo things, I would recommend going to community college for the first 2 years if you can. A lot of times, yes, you can still get like student loans for community college, but it's not going to cost anywhere near as much to attend a regular, traditional university. So I recommend starting like at a community college, at least getting your core classes out of the way, or looking at some of those degrees that you can get from a community college that will pay you more money than some of these fields for bachelor's degrees. Like, for example, I have a high school friend who's a dental hygienist. She went to community college for 2 years. She makes more than me. There you go. And I have a master's. She has no student loan debt. She paid it off within the first year. So it's just one of those things. I really do wish that I could, if I were to do things differently, I would do things over again. So yes, Joe Biden needs to cancel student loan debt. And yes, I really do believe if this does not happen come 2024, I don't think he's going to win come 2024. I don't think he's going to win probably anyway because he's just not doing a good job. But the student loans, if they don't cancel student loans and they have to cancel all of it, not just $10,000, if they don't cancel all of it, they're done. They're done. Saul says trade or tech school. Absolutely. And this is another thing too, where I feel like it's not valued the way that it should be. A lot of these trade skills that you can learn, some of these tech skills, for example, carpentry, electricians, plumbers, you need people to do those things. Those are fields that you can go into that for the most part, you're going to have a job. And believe it or not, there's so many like mom and pop like companies here in Massachusetts that are so and so's electricity and plumbing or so and so's carpentry. And I see the trucks all the time. And they're mom and pop businesses and they're family owned and they pass it down to the next person and the next person. That's actually a good idea, a good business idea, because you know that people are going to need plumbers. And I can tell you, you live here one winter, at some point, you might need one too. Whether you need an electrician or a plumber. But I feel like those trades are not valued the way that they should be. We have kind of been conditioned that we have to go to these 4-year universities, and you really don't. And I look back on it and I just think that like, wow, could this have been prevented? But I don't want you to blame yourself because we were sold a lie. We really were. My generation, we were sold a big fat lie. Echo J says, I wish I'd done the trade tech route, but when I was in high school, it was definitely looked down upon. Yep. But these grads are doing much better than I am right now. Right. 100%. I really don't know. See, this is why I didn't want to move my computer. I'm sorry, guys. I was doing some work on my computer and some things got moved around, and that's why my camera, now my lighting's all messed up, but screw it. I had to fix it later. But that's still not where my camera was. Give me just a second. Nope. There we go. Okay. Um, so yeah, no, I agree 100%. Eric Gray said, if I'm not mistaken, don't Black women hold the most student loan debt? Yeah, we do, because we are actually, last time I looked at the numbers, we were the largest group with master's degrees. I have to double check. I think I saw that about 2 years ago, so I would have to double check that. But obviously, like if you go to grad school, then that's more student loan debt that you're going to have. And some people say, well, why do you guys go on to grad school? Because some of these fields that we're in order for us to move up in those fields, you have to have a master's degree. Higher ed is a perfect example, which was the field that I came from. In higher ed, a lot of times in those positions such as academic advisors, they want you to have a master's degree. That's what I was. I was an academic advisor. So you had to have a master's degree. If you want to be an assistant dean or associate dean, you need to have a master's degree. Going up anywhere from there, they may want you to have a PhD. So that's why a lot of times we end up going back to school, because in order for us to move up and get a larger salary, we have to have a master's degree. It's unfortunate, but it's just the reality of the situation. Okay, I am moving into my second story. Now, I don't know if you guys know much about Thandie Newton. For those who may not be familiar with her, she was Will Smith's wife in the movie Pursuit of Happiness. So she had a small role in that one. But she was on Sky News. For those who don't know, Sky News is a European news network. We had Sky News when I lived in Germany. And she said something about dark-skinned actresses. I don't know where this came from. I will tell you, people are dragging her all over Twitter, because I don't think people really like the way that this came off from her. I'm not sure why she brought this up in this interview. It seemed to me like that's obviously like not what this interview was about. But she did, and people are not happy about it. I'm going to share this, and then I'm going to get into the larger issue. Thanks so much, Delthea Simmons, for the super chat. Sabby, tell it, community college can be the difference between sleeping on your couch because you want to and sleeping on your dad's couch because you have to. 100%. 100%. Thank you so much for the super chat, Delthea. So let's see what Thandie Newton said. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. But she really just lost it in this interview. She said, it says Thandie Newton has said she wants to apologize every day to dark-skinned actresses for not representing them. Now, I don't know where this came from, but here we go. It has over 2 million views. Let me mute my mic really quick.
I've wanted so desperately to apologize every day to darker skinned actresses, to say, I'm sorry that I'm the one chosen. My mama looks like you. My mum looks like you. And it's been very painful to have women that look like my mum feel like I'm not representing them, that I'm taking from them, taking their men, taking their work, taking their truth. I didn't mean to, you know.
Hold up, let's hear this again. I'm going to chime in here because this is just a little bit. I'm like, what is this about? Like, what are you? All right, let's try this again. Let's do this again. Here we go. Hold on. Okay.
I've wanted so desperately to apologize every day to darker skinned actresses, to say, I'm sorry that I'm the one chosen. My mama looks like you.
What? My mama looks like you? Oh, okay. And I just okay. I don't know. What's that got to do with anything? Like, okay, your mom looks like us. All right, cool. I just don't understand. Like, where is this coming from now all of a sudden? You know how many movies Tandy Newton has been in? She was in like Mission Impossible. Like, it just, and she's crying. And she says she took roles from people. I'm going to get into that, like the bigger Hollywood issue about that in just a second. But she's saying that she took roles from people. All right, let's go back in. Hold on.
My mum looks like you, and it's been very painful to have women that look like my mum feel like I'm not representing them, that I'm taking from them, taking their men.
So I didn't understand this part when she said taking their men because Tandy Newton's husband is white. So I don't, my brain, I don't understand. I don't understand. I mean, she can marry whoever she wants. I don't care. But I don't understand where that statement came from. That's just a little odd. Hmm.
Taking their work, taking their truth. I didn't mean to, you know.
Okay, so she has really been getting dragged all over Twitter for that video. And I don't think it's so much that she's mentioning like colorism in Hollywood. I think it's more so all these years, like in your career, it's like, why now? Why are you coming out now? Also, she seemed really emotional about this. She was really bawling. Like, it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. So people are mocking it like on Twitter. Um, and yes, there is preferential treatment in Hollywood for lighter skinned women. And in fact, I'm going to get into that in just a second. But I want to show you a video. Now, this is coming from Beyonce's father. And I've seen him say this on more than one interview about why his daughter is successful. And I think you guys will appreciate this. So I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to tell you more about this, about colorism in Hollywood. It's not just Hollywood, but why it happens. And then I'm going to tell you about another example with Zoe Saldana. So give me just a second. So first, I want to ask the audience this question. Is he right? Is he right when he says that if it were not for Beyonce's complexion, and he mentions other people as well, he mentions Mariah Carey, Alicia Keys, Rihanna, if it were not for their complexion, is it true that they would not be as successful as they are? I had to really think about that. And I had to think about like the artists and the actresses that I grew up with. Well, not personally grew up with, but I grew up like watching and listening to. And I've noticed something, even when you look at models. Now, modeling isn't as big as it used to be. It used to be like when I was a kid, I remember seeing like models on the cover of magazines. Later on, that changed to more so actresses being on the cover of those magazines and musicians as well. But I remember when like modeling was huge in this country. And I remember at one point in time, the only black model I knew of was Naomi Campbell. Now, Naomi Campbell has darker skin, but at that time, she was the only one that had darker skin. And then after her, or the popular one, I should say. And then after her, there was Tyra Banks. And Tyra Banks had lighter skin. There's other people we can name: Halle Berry, Janet Jackson. Is he right when he says that if it was not for her complexion, she would not be as successful as she is? Don't get me wrong, Beyonce is very talented. She has an amazing voice, excellent range. But what if Beyonce was darker skinned? I don't know. I'm gonna go back in. Okay, let me give you my experience with this. I remember when I was growing up, and I can only speak about this from a female perspective. Sorry, I'm not a guy, so I don't know how it was like for guys. But I remember when I was growing up, I remember the boys in my school saying that the lighter skinned girls were the pretty girls. I remember that. I remember having kids in my school call me darky, both black and white, by the way. And you have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Where does that mentality come from? Now, I was talking to Dr. Karim Batesh about this on my show a couple weeks ago, and he was saying it actually comes from colonialism. That's where colorism comes from. Why do we have colorism in the African American community? By the way, it's not just in the Black community. My dad lived in South Korea. He said, if you go to South Korea, you'll see it there too. My uncle lived in Thailand. He said, if you go to Thailand, you'll see it there too. If you go to India, you'll see it there too. Why do we have it in the African American community? If you go back all the way back to slavery, which slaves were in the field and which slaves were in the house? The lighter skinned slaves were in the house. That alone gave Black people the perception that lighter skin was better. Even in our own race, that lighter skin was better. And that's still an issue today. I didn't really think about this until he brought it up when he talked about the musicians. And then I started thinking about the actresses, especially with Tandy's speech that she gave. And it's true. If you take a good look, there are a few, but there's always a few exceptions. But for the most part, why is it that way? JB's in the chat. He said the paper bag test. That's actually a thing. I don't know if people realize that. If you're not familiar with this, that's actually a thing where if you were considered like pretty or attractive if you were lighter than a paper bag. That's actually a thing. So it just makes you wonder, you know. I do remember those things growing up, though. It seemed like the boys always thought that the pretty girls were the lighter skinned girls. But that's what we've been conditioned to believe. Now I want to show you another example. And this one is Zoe Saldana. Now, for those of you who do not know, Zoe Saldana played Nina Simone. I have to show you a picture of Nina Simone so you can understand why this was so controversial. Now, Nina Simone was a musician. She really did pave the way for a lot of people, I think. Amazing artist, activist. All right, here's a picture of her. Let me share my screen. I want to show you what Nina Simone looks like. You're going to get a kick out of this one if you are not familiar with her. This is Nina Simone. It's one of her albums here. You can scroll down. Nina Simone. Probably one of the most, I'd say, talented musicians. Nina Simone. You see what she looks like, right? Okay. Now let me show you who played Nina Simone. Now somebody explained this to me. And I remember when this came out, I was like, really? Out of all the people to play Nina Simone, you couldn't find anybody that resembled her in any type of way? So they picked Zoe Saldana to play Nina Simone. Now I'm going to make this a little bit larger because there's something I want to point out about this picture. If you noticed, that's Zoe Saldana. That is not her complexion. They actually used makeup to make Zoe Saldana darker so that she would resemble Nina Simone more so. What kind of BS is that? This is not a movie from 1972. This was recent. This was recent. They don't look alike. They don't look alike. Look, I'll show you side by side. Zoe Saldana, Nina Simone. Let me show you the pictures. Side by side. This is just terrible. This is terrible. Let me share my screen. Look at this. Now you can see here, this picture right here in the middle. This is what Zoe Saldana looks like on the left. That is her true complexion. You see the makeup that they put on her to make her look like Nina Simone? Let's go to this picture. This is Nina Simone right here on the left. This is Zoe Saldana right here on the right. Now, somebody tell me, out of all the actresses in Hollywood, you couldn't find anybody somewhat closer to Nina Simone's complexion? Really? Zoe Saldana apologized for this. She was criticized heavily for taking this role. I'm going to show you what she said. Give me just a second. Share my screen here. Zoe Saldana has finally and tearfully apologized for playing Nina Simone in Nina, the doomed 2016 biopic of the iconic civil rights activist and jazz artist. I should have never played Nina, the Afro-Latina actress said repeatedly during a Bessay interview posted Tuesday on Instagram. I should have done everything in my power with the leverage that I had 10 years ago, which was a different leverage, but it was leverage nothing less. I should have done everything in my power to cast a Black woman to play an exceptionally perfect Black woman. The Avatar, Star Trek, and Guardians of the Galaxy star spoke out during a lengthy interview about representation, racism, and colorism with Posse creator Steve Canals. So I can't play that on here because I thought back then that I had the permission because I was a Black woman, and I am, but it was Nina Simone. And Nina had a life and she had a journey that should have been and should be honored to the most specific detail because she was a specifically detailed individual. She deserves better. With that, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The actress said through tears, later adding, I know better today and I'm never going to do that again. Going down here, let me tell you, if Elizabeth Taylor can be Cleopatra, I can be Nina. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how much backlash I will get for it. I will honor and respect my Black community because that's who I am. That's what she had said previously, just FYI. The star, who is of Dominican and Puerto Rican descent, was dragged for sticking with the part, which involved using skin darkening makeup and a prosthetic nose to make Saldana appear more like the singer, who was proud of her looks. When the long gestating films trailer landed and the film arrived in theaters in 2016, it was again met with harsh criticism and scathing reviews and drew ire from Simone's estate and fans for Saldana's casting. Thanks so much, Delthea Simmons, for the super chat. Nina fought to get dark-skinned women performers accepted in entertainment. It was a disgrace to her memory and her work to use Zoe in blackface. I agree. That was really bad. There's so many other people you could have picked to do that role. So many other people. So yes, like colorism in Hollywood is a problem, but it's not just a problem in Hollywood. We have to ask ourselves, like, why does this happen in Hollywood though? I think it happens because, again, like I told you, when I was growing up, they used to say that the lighter skinned girls were the prettier girls. I believe a lot of these casting directors in Hollywood still believe that till this day, that lighter skin is more beautiful. I think that's why they cast them. I believe that they think that it's less threatening because this has been shown too over studies. Studies have shown that people see darker skin as threatening. I believe that they think it will be more appealing to people who are white. Just being honest. But it's not just a problem in Hollywood, it's a problem across the board. I had an uncle who lived in Thailand, I was telling you about. He said, you can go to Thailand, you go to any convenience store, and you'll see aisles and aisles of skin bleaching cream. My dad said the same thing when he went to South Korea. A friend of mine from India said the same thing. So it doesn't just happen here in the United States, it happens across the world. And that takes it back to colonialism. Because people who settled and claimed those lands usually were of European descent. JB Font said, as a darker skinned man, I felt like I was unattractive for a long time. Oh, JB. Oh, no, no, no. No, no. Oh, no. Everybody give JB a clap in the chat. No, no, JB. Cryptician said most people who have the extreme success and popularity that Lauryn Hill had usually get invited by Hollywood and others to expand their roles. But that never happened to Lauryn Hill because she's dark skinned. Yeah. Yeah. She was also very outspoken. Saul said, so Tandy Newton feels guilty for Hollywood's brown paper bag test, says sorry, but people are angry with her, not Hollywood. WTF. Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it. I think some people feel like they just don't understand where it's coming from now after all these years that she's been in the business. She's just now saying something about it. And I don't think it had anything to do with the interview either. I think that was the other part that people found to be kind of cringe. So I get that. It was clear to me that this is obviously something that Tandy has been holding in for a while. It's obviously something that's been bothering her for a long time. And this is what happens, I think, sometimes when you hold things in. I don't think that's healthy. I think it's good to release what's inside. I don't think it's good to hold things in because this is what happens. Like you just finally got a moment and it just all came out. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. It is a problem in society. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this story is because sometimes I've heard people say, they don't think it's right when people say things like black is beautiful or whatever, or there's shirts that people have called flexing in my complexion. That was actually created by a teenage girl who was dark skinned, and she created that because she was getting picked on in school by the kids who told her she was too dark. And the reason why we have those things is because, like, for years and decades, especially like in this country per se, people that are darker skinned, again, I can't speak for the men, but as a female, people who are darker skinned, time and time again, we have been told in so many different ways that lighter skin is beautiful. And sometimes someone doesn't have to actually come out and say those words per se. They can show you in other ways. Like I said, when I was growing up, most of the women on the cover of the magazines were either white or they had lighter skin. When I was a kid, I was really into Barbie dolls. Most of the Barbie dolls were white. There was one black Barbie doll. Her name was Christy, and she had curly, or not curly, like crimpy hair. It was like crimp. People used to crimp their hair. Christy was the one black Barbie doll. So that's why we have those phrases, to remind people that, yes, you are beautiful the way that you are. And you got to believe that. And you have to know that. Because I'm going to tell you, I'll be real with you. If you wait for other people to tell you that you are, eh, you might be waiting a long time or not, just not hear it at all. So you have to know that I feel that someone's beauty is not necessarily about the complexion. Beauty should come from within, but the tone of your skin shouldn't determine whether or not you're beautiful. And so if you're watching this and you've had those questions and you've had those doubts and you felt that way, I'm here to tell you that you are beautiful just the way that you are. Bump these fools. I'm going to tell you, like, there's a lot of people out there that just, they want nothing else to do but to hate, right? It makes them feel good to make you feel bad. That's why I say you should never look for you should never look for validation from other people. You should look for that within yourself. You should never rely on someone else to like you and love you. You should always like and love yourself first. That is very important. And I recommend you pass that message on to, especially younger girls today. Pass that message on to younger girls, teenage girls, girls in middle school, even in elementary school. Never, ever look or seek for that approval from other people. You have to know that you like and love yourself first. Because in the end, if things don't work out with the person who says that they love you or you're beautiful and you don't love yourself, when they leave, you may feel like you're nothing. And it should never be that way. So, pass that on to peeps, pass it on. Now, how can this be fixed? I honestly think, yeah, there needs to be some changes in Hollywood. There needs to be some changes. And it doesn't need to be just necessarily, let's add more diversity. That alone is not going to fix the problem. People need to be educated. People need to learn like why they have the thinking that they have, why they believe the way that they believe. You have to change. It's like Josana says, you have to decolonize your mind. So you have to educate those people, because just putting in diversity like that doesn't explain why they think the way that they do or why they feel that this skin color is pretty and this skin color is not. So I think it's really important that education is key. And that's, for me, at the end of the day, I always bring it back to education. A lot of these things that we have, a lot of these problems, a lot of these biases that we have in our society is because of a lack of education, because people have not been educated in such a way that will really open up their mind to see things that they may not be used to seeing, that can make people more open-minded. But you got to get outside your circles, people. You got to get outside your bubbles. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You can't just talk to people in your circle. That's not how you learn from other people. You want to learn from other people? You got to start talking to other people. That's my message for tonight. Now, if you do want more Sabby, I gotta fix this light. This light is driving me crazy. I don't like you tonight. I don't like you. If you want more Sabby, I'll be live on my channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. I'm talking about Jimmy Dore School's Tucker Carlson. That was an interesting interview. I'm going to dive into that. Susan Sarandon calls out NYPD. We're going to get into that. And Eric and I are actually going to talk about Black Mirror and the warnings that come from that. And the question that we have, are we currently living in a Black Mirror episode? I don't know. But we will find out. And we'll dive into that tonight. So, guys, it is Friday. Have a good weekend. Talk to you later. And you know how we do this? Have a good night. Keep up the fight.